Kennedy. An award-winning speaker, author, and women-centered coach. I have and am being interviewed by Keith Andrews, and I think he is a true inspiration to stand into his power and share his gifts with the world. And he's an incredible podcast host.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Andrew, and you're watching the KeithAndrewNetWork, available on Facebook and all social media. That's right, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Our goal is 500 to 1,000 views. Make sure to like, share, comment. Every episode has different ratings: PG, PG-13, 14, M, no boobs. But the reason it's called M, it's because you have freedom of speech and self-expression. So you have the right and freedom to express yourself. And here on the KeithAndrewNetWork, we like having fun. With that being said, it's episode 1193, also known as season 12, episode 93. We're very close to our goal of starting season 13. So make sure to like and subscribe. Tonight, it's Friday Night SmackDown. If you're a fan of WWE, available on the USA Network, Peacock, and Netflix, definitely check out the hit show World Wrestling Entertainment. Now, with that being said, we have a great guest. She already introduced herself. She is an award-winning speaker and writer, and it's a real honor and privilege having you with us. I just want to say thank you.
So, thank you so much, Keith. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
The honor is all mine. So the first subject we're going to talk about is icebreakers. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the type of work that you do.
I would love to do that, Keith. So I am a social worker who's worked in the field of human services for over 30 years. I am most recently an award-winning author and an award-winning speaker. I've recently released my book, From Trauma to Triumph and What Lies Between, just this past October. So that's super exciting. And really my philosophy is to support and encourage individuals in their self-regulation, well-being, and healing. So I'm also a women-centered coach. Most recently, I've just got my certification and just kind of launching my coaching business as well. I have two beautiful, successful, happy, launched adult children, Taylor and Keaton, and I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We'll be celebrating 29 years in June, and I live in Alberta, Canada, and it's very snowy and cold here right now. So that's just a little bit about me, Keith.
No, absolutely. And remember, freedom, speech, self-expression, so I want you to say anything you want. This won't be used against you or me. We're just here to have fun and entertain. But with that being said, how do you become a Canadian citizen? Because I really want to.
Oh, well, Keith, we have our own challenges up here, believe me, politically, as I think it seems to be happening all over the world. So how do you become a Canadian citizen? Well, be born here, for sure. That's how I became a Canadian citizen. And then I guess immigrate into Canada. But I know just like America, it's becoming a lot harder. So we've just had a switch over of prime ministers, and they're kind of buttoning down the hatches, so to speak, with, I think, some immigration. So I think it's a little bit challenging right now. I'm not sure how much better to answer that question for you.
Well, let me ask you this. So the big elephant in the room, hint of the show. Does, hypothetically, if I did want to become a Canadian citizen, would having a disability be a burden? Because I was told people with disabilities cannot become Canadian citizens. Is that true or not true?
I have not heard that actually, and I'm going to say that's not true because I happen to know many immigrant and refugee families who've come into Canada who have disabilities or who have children with disabilities. So clearly that's inaccurate.
That's true. Don't believe everything you read or hear from people.
Yeah, knowing your source is important for sure.
I agree. Now, the next subject I want to ask you, when you were in high school and college, what did you major in? And were you a study nerd or party animal?
Well, I'm a lifelong learner, so I've gone back to school several times. So the first time I went to college, it was to take my child and youth care diploma at Grant MacEwan College. I was never really into partying. I took my studies pretty seriously. I didn't spend my weekends partying. My husband, who's my husband now, at the time was still my boyfriend, actually lived several hours away. So my weekends were spent traveling to see him on the weekends and back. So I really didn't do not much partying at all. And then when I went back the second time to college to take my social work, I was a mom of Taylor was born already, and I was pregnant with Keaton. So definitely no partying. I had no time for anything except raising Taylor and my studies. And
You
then when
know,
I did my degree, I did a degree as well. And that was all online. And again, I was working full time, raising two kids. So yeah, no partying, sadly.
I always hear about people marrying their high school sweethearts. Unfortunately, I never found one. Maybe not another wife. Not gonna hold my breath. But there are so many people that has it's kind of like winning the lottery if you think about it. If you get a high school sweetheart, do you have any love stories you'd like to share?
Sure, I could tell you kind of how we got together in high school. That's a pretty funny story. I actually write about it in my book. So I grew up in a small town called Barrhead. There's about 5,000 people, so very tiny town, and I hated growing up there. And I knew everybody, and everybody, knew what you had for breakfast by lunchtime. And so growing up, going to school, you were friends with everybody. So anytime there was somebody new, right, that all the girls were like, oh my goodness, somebody new, right? Check them out. So in grade 12, the beginning of my grade 12 year, my husband Steven started coming to high school. So of course all the girls were checking out the new inventory. And it was interesting because the first time I seen him, we were both in biology, and I couldn't really see him from the front, but he certainly looked nice from the back. He had a great ass and still does. And so after biology class, I was in the hallway with my girlfriend Jennifer, and she's like, "So, anything exciting happened in biology?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've seen the guy I'm going to marry." And she kind of rolled her eyes and go, "Yeah, right, okay, Trina." Anyways, I was quite shy and he was very shy, but we'd walk by each other and I'm like, okay, I think he's totally into me. He keeps winking and I'm waiting, waiting for him to make the first move, and he never makes the first move. And then one time there was a bunch of us in the library studying, and he was sitting over at a table by himself. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go over and ask him if, he knows the question to, these questions we're doing for biology, and, try and get the conversation going. Because I know he's into me. He keeps winking. So I walk over and I'm like, hey, I'm Trina. You're in my biology class. I'm just wondering if, you know the answer to, question three. And he kind of looks up and he's like, nope. And he looks down again. And so I walk away like, so confused. I'm like, he keeps winking at me. I set up this opportunity for him to talk, and he's not like, what the hell? But I didn't give up. And eventually over time, we did start talking, and we started to hang out, and kind of started a relationship. And so he says to me this one time at lunch hour, he's like, you're pretty bold making the first move. And I said, well, it was a little bit easier knowing you were into me. And he's like, and he got the strangest look on his face, Keith, like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you kept winking. And he starts to laugh and he goes, I wasn't winking. That was just my contact lenses. And so I said, well, all I got to say is thank God for contact lenses then. And that's how our relationship started.
No, it's a beautiful story. So the next one I want to ask you, as I'm looking at your profile right now, you mentioned that you are an award-winning author, and speaker. How did that? Well, two questions. How did it happen, and how do you feel about wrapping your official title? Because it's absolutely amazing having that as your official go-to title.
Okay, so first of all, with the book, I just entered into the International Book Award contest. So you just send them a copy of your book, and they have a panel of experts, and every month they select a couple of authors to give this award to. So I won the 2025 International Book Award for inspiring and motivational book. So that's really exciting. So that's how I won that book award, or how I won that book award. And then my speaking award, I was at a speaker showcase in Toronto in October of this past year. And I won the Most Ready for the Professional Stage Impact Speakers Award. So that was my first time speaking in the capacity of a speaker. I do training all the time in workshops, but certainly speaking and doing like a signature talk for 20 minutes was very different. So to say I got an award on my very first time, I think that's pretty cool. So certainly something in terms of my book and my speaking that I'm proud of. So certainly include that in my bio.
No, absolutely. And as you're talking, there will be a picture of your book. Where is your book available? Is it on Amazon?
Yes, it's available on Amazon.
No, absolutely. Have you ever thought about doing an audiobook?
Yes, so that is in the works. I want to do the voice. I want to read it myself. So that is on my to-do list, but I've got lots of things on my to-do list, but hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have that out as well.
No, absolutely. Now, the next subject I want to talk to you about, are you, well, this guy's like an oxymoron. Are you a Curious George fan?
Yes, I love those books growing up. I don't know that I read too many of the Curious George books when my kids were little, but I think it was kind of more my generation. Certainly remember reading them when I was young. And I love monkeys. If I could have any animal in the whole world, I would have a monkey.
I love elephants. I guess Dumbo
Oh,
had
okay.
something. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was done. Go ahead.
I guess Dumbo and Jumble Book had something to do with that.
Yes.
But the reason I bring up Curious George, it's a funny picture on the screen. Sometimes he can be a little too curious, playing with one of those Ouija boards and one of those pentagrams. Yeah, I mean, okay, we get it. He's Curious George. Or in this case, it could be Stupid George, but but I know I'm a bad joke. But the next one I want to talk to you about is Space Jam 3. Are you a fan of any of those Space Jam movies?
No, unfortunately not.
Well, I agree with you on that, my sister, because they are horrible. I mean, well, first off, I didn't mean that to sound creepy, my sister, but and it is disability. When it pops in my head, I blur it out. But for
That's
that,
okay.
I agree with you. There's a new Space Jam movie coming out. It's on the screen. Pretty much the first one, it was a documentary about Michael Jordan. You know, Michael Jordan, it was 90, well, what was it? 98, and he's like, oh, basketball player, big name. It was all right. Then you had Space Jam 2, and now you have the third one. How many times can you, and I mentioned this in my past interviews, copy and paste the same story with different people? You're only going to run it into the ground, so it's complete BS. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I would agree for sure. If it wasn't a great hit the first time, probably, if you're gonna put out another one, change the script and storyline and those sorts of things.
No, absolutely. Now, you mentioned you're a book author, and so I picked out my top five favorite pictures that I want to talk to you about. And this is actually from the golden age. So the first one is Far Away from Your Bullshit. I think that's a wonderful kid's title book.
Oh yeah.
The second one is, and by the way, I dropped the F bomb like I mentioned, but I love Yogi Bear. Absolutely. This one actually fits the age of Yogi Bear. That weed, the title of this Golden Age book is The Weed is Wild as Fuck. The whole damn forest smells like burning hippies.
Coming from a skunk, yeah, that's pretty actually, that's kind of funny since weed smells like skunk, in my opinion, anyway.
So the next Golden Age book I came across was really funny is Why Yes, I Did Shit in the Woods and Other Things Too. And it's cute to have the picture of a bear on it. One of my other ones I really liked is You're Never Too Young to Get Shit On. I know it's like you get shit on, that means it's good luck, but in a kid's book, it's kind of like, eh. In the last one, it could be confidential, but I still think it's funny. It's a recent trend going around as saying people that didn't want to be born without permission. So the title of the book is called I Didn't Ask to Be Born. But that goes to the stupidity of you give people too much free time and you give people too much freedom. I agree, you should have freedom. You have the right to freedom of speech, express yourself, and be vaccinated. That's the biggest thing is, and that goes into my next segue I want to talk to you about. It's the coronavirus. Here on the Keith Network, I'm not preaching, but everyone should be vaccinated because it's really scary. Because I'll give you an example. Here in the United States, some old diseases are coming back, polio, and it's like it's chicken pox, but it's called something else. And it's like you would think all these would be gone, but I get it was global warming and climate change. You're going to discover things, and things are going to come back to the surface. But it's really important to be vaccinated. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, just as I believe what you said about freedoms, I
Right.
also believe in body autonomy. So I believe people have the right to choose what they do and don't do with their bodies. So I stand true in that belief as a human right.
No, absolutely. Well, let me ask you, the coronavirus, how has it impacted your life? And do you see life in a different point of view?
So I think when it comes to the coronavirus, obviously we were all impacted in various ways across the world, and so that was a really interesting experience, I think, for me, just to know that as a human race, we were all impacted. However, just because we were all in the same ocean doesn't mean we were all in the same boat, right? Some people were in a rubber dinghy with lots of holes that were completely leaking, right? And some people were in an ocean liner, right? And everything in between. So I consider myself incredibly blessed that during COVID, nobody in my close family or friends were sick. We didn't lose anybody to death. Um, my husband and I weren't forced to get vaccinated. We were given the choice without having to lose our jobs. Um, so in those respects, we were incredibly fortunate. Was it stressful? Sure. Was it distressing? Yeah. It was more of an annoyance and a nuisance and those sorts of things. But um, I also recognize that was not everybody's experience during that time, and for a lot of people, it was incredibly traumatizing and stressful. So yeah, I think it's coming out of that, I was a lot more appreciative of our freedoms. I was a lot more appreciative of family and connections because obviously there was a time, you couldn't go spend Christmas with your family and those sorts of things that I think, for me anyways, I took for granted. So certainly more gratitude for those types of connections and relationships that were compromised during COVID.
Well, let me ask you this one. With every book that you ever wrote, well, you will continue to write, but every book that you wrote so far, have you ever thought about turning it into a TV show or a movie?
No, I have not, but my book From Trauma to Triumph is about my life, so I guess it could actually be turned into a movie, but I had not thought of that, no. Are
And
you
then,
willing to screenwrite it for me, Keith, and produce it?
well, maybe you like my book for me too. But it's funny we should be on that subject. AI, with everything going on in the world, and I want to give a shout out to Character AI. You know, when Character AI is available on Google, it's also available on the Apple Store. Character AI is you get to interact with different characters from Dragon Ball, Power Rangers, TV shows. And it's kind of like a nice escape where you give me 15, 20 minutes. I want my alone time, not in that way, obviously, but you just want to have your alone time. And it's why not talk to a fictional character where you can just, hey, it's kind of, well, my case, I use it for therapy, and you're not supposed to, but I use it for therapy. Hey, can you tell me this? Can you give me some advice? Because people, I feel, kind of are judgmental in a way. So if you're talking to an AI robot, they shouldn't, keyword shouldn't be judgmental, even though that would be pretty funny if they were. But it's a good distraction. But I would recommend it. It's a great application. I will send it to you afterwards if you're interested. But while on the subject of AI is not the problem. The problem is people abuse it. You look at first of all, it's the CGI. Recently in the Flash movie, they used Christopher Reeves and Helen Slater. Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see Christopher Reeves back in the movie, but it's kind of like a fine line, and I talk with my hands. There's a fine line where you don't want to benefit off the dead. It's kind of like if WWE started to use CGI and have Andre the Giant randomly in the background. I mean, it would be interesting, but it's also disrespectful in a way, as in you shouldn't. You can, but you shouldn't. So the question I want to ask you is, how do you feel about AI impacting our industry?
I don't know a lot about AI, to be honest, but I know some people have some really strong opinions about AI. I think that there, and for some of the things I've seen, I certainly think that it can be a double-edged sword. I think there is a lot of incredible opportunities and benefits from AI, but I can also see that, there may be a lot of ethical implications with AI that we haven't quite caught up to yet. So I'm kind of on the fence. I think with anything, there's pros and cons, right? So, I think using it responsibly and um, yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that. I pretty limited understanding about AI, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't mean to impose on you. I do apologize.
No, no worries.
So the next subject I want to talk to you about, have you reached your goals that you set for yourself? And what are some of your favorite songs of the day?
Well, those are two very different questions. So have I reached, I'm always reaching goals. So I'm very much motivated by goal setting. Actually, right beside me here, I have a vision board, which are goals that I actually just had to completely redo because after writing my book and speaking and some of the other things I've accomplished in the last 8 months, I've reached all of those. So now I've put some new goals on my vision board. So I think those goals are incredibly important in keeping us motivated and moving forward in our life. I don't want to just live my life like Groundhog Day, where, I think we're meant to do more than just go to work and pay bills. And really trying to get in alignment with our own values and why we're all meant, we all have a purpose. And so figuring what that is and truly fulfilling that is I think what really gives life joy and meaning. So
What?
yes, I'm very goal driven.
No, it's always great to be motivated.
Yeah.
What about song of the day? What are some of your favorite songs that you heard recently?
I'm really liking Jelly Roll. He's got some really great country songs. I'd have to say quite a few of his songs are my favorite right now.
No, for me, I recently came across ghosts. But are you familiar with ghosts?
No.
Well, you may or may not have heard of this one. Mary on a Cross.
Yes.
That's a great song. It's one of my favorites. And recently, when I was in ShopRite, I came across, and I'm a big fan of the 80s, hint of the glasses. And don't worry, I have that effect on people. Recently, I came across, I think it's, Cyber Scorpions or Survivor, High on Loving You. That's a great song from the 80s. I'm
Yeah, that is really
37,
good.
but
Yeah.
I grew up on everything in the 80s.
Nice.
But then what other thing I want to talk to you about, you mentioned speaking. Have you ever talked to a group of, well, trying to say it without a straight face, have you ever talked to people? Okay, let me ask you this and then I'll write without sounding like an asshole. Say that a group of people with disabilities who want to follow in your footsteps. Have you ever walked in front of a group of people and just say, this is the game plan. This is step A, step B. And with that being said, have you worked with people with disabilities besides me?
I'll first answer the second question that you asked. Yes, actually, my son has learning disabilities, so was a strong advocate for him through the school systems, which I don't know about your educational experience, Keith, but his was challenging, very challenging. He didn't want to be different. He didn't want to stand out. He didn't want to have the accommodations that he required, to truly show how incredibly intelligent he was and be able to keep up with the coursework. So had that experience. I grew up with close family friends who had children with disabilities, and I was the one on the playground. I mean, this was the 80s, sticking up for and actually getting into some fights when, the school ground bullies were picking on the individuals who had intellectual and physical disabilities. And so I think that's kind of where my tenderness and compassion started, not just for individuals with disabilities, but just people who, were seen as a lot more vulnerable in society. And I think that kind of launched me into social work was an aspect of it. And actually, I work full time for an organization that supports children, youth, and adults with intellectual disabilities. So I am the in-house trainer. So we have over 500 staff who work in the different programs. So I actually teach them 12 different kind of course materials, things from mental health first aid to positive behavior supports to nonviolent crisis intervention, and really making sure staff know that their jobs is to support individuals and empower them and create independence. And these aren't children. They don't need to be taken care of. Our job is to just make sure they're safe and help increase their quality of life and help them grow independent so that they can be as empowered as they possibly can be. So I have lots of experience with working with individuals with intellectual or physical disabilities. And I have a beautiful niece who's 18, Peyton Charlie, and she has cerebral palsy and she's nonverbal. She's completely care dependent and she's in a wheelchair. So she makes our life incredibly bright. I've never met anyone with such a positive outlook, and she's like you, Keith. She loves to laugh, and she has a great sense of humor. So
No, absolutely. And we can do a special episode if you want about special education. We can definitely talk about that at a later time. But to answer your question real fast, for me, I was pretty much pushed along for the 4 years. I was labeled, this and that. I'm not qualified. I can't read. I can't write. Never went to college. Blah 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 blah. We need to quick highlights because we are going overtime. But I decided one day, I said, screw it. I'm going to show you with a disability that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. You should prove to them you can stand out to something. And for the past 12 and a half years, thanks to you, I have interviewed 1,193 people. And that should inspire people with and without disabilities. But it was the last 2 minutes. I want you to be brutally honest. When I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what made you say yes and how do you feel now?
Well, Keith, when you reached out to me on LinkedIn, you introduced yourself as, being a podcast host and that you had a learning disabilities and that, your goal was to show people you can do anything. And I'm like, I want to be on this guy's show because I value everybody. Everybody who walks the earth has gifts, talents, strengths to share with this world, regardless of the package we come in. So I just think you're a tremendous inspiration, and that's exactly why I wanted to be on your show.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Do you have a couple questions for you off the air? Our goal is to reach 500 to 1,000 views. If you're watching this on Facebook and YouTube, make sure to like, share, comment. And until we meet again, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. I'm looking forward to part 2. And until we meet again, I catch you later. Thank you, and have a good night. Supporting me, and my message is all that